Arlington National Cemetery in Washington, D.C. is where heroes rest. During this very special two-part episode, you're going to meet people who have sacrificed beyond our imagination. A Gold Star mother, a young widow, fatherless children, and a soldier who with his family is struggling back from devastating wounds. These are the people who have paid the price for your freedoms. Stay with us. Helene Paci is a Gold Star mother who lost her son in war. This native of Washington, D.C. and her husband Leo were blessed with 3 sons, Tony, Nicky, and Marco. Tony, the oldest, joined the Army in October of 2004 and a year later was deployed to Baghdad, Iraq. While overseas, Tony met his future wife Erica on a military dating website. His return home was a joyous celebration that culminated in his marriage to his new love. Over the next 3 years, Tony and Erica had 3 children, Judah, Lulu, and Mila. But on his second deployment to Afghanistan in 2010, tragedy struck. Tell me about that last time that you saw Tony when he was home.
The whole family was here, Leo, and just had a lovely day, relaxed. Everybody was happy. We ate, we drank, we talked. We had a wonderful, wonderful time. He gave me a big hug and a kiss and he left. And that was the last time we saw him. He was just happy. He was really happy.
Can you tell me about that day, that tragic day on March 4th?
Tony had actually called me on March 2nd. And then he's, Erica's having a really hard time. I know you were just there, but maybe you could take a couple days off and fly out there and give her a hand. He made me promise that if anything ever happened, I would take care of her and the babies. So he always knew I would. So anyway, that was the last time I talked to him, was March 2nd. So March 4th in the morning.
Which was a special day for you.
It was my birthday. And everyone was calling to say happy birthday. And when Erica called, I kind of was busy at work and I looked in my phone and saw it was her and I thought, I'll call her back. But then I guess my mother's intuition or whatever decided I'd better call her. So I went into a part of the store where I was had a little more privacy. And I called her, and when she answered the phone, she was almost incoherent. She was just screaming. She kept saying, "He's gone, he's gone." And I was like, "Who's gone? What's gone? What happened?" She could hardly talk. And she said, "There's these guys standing here telling me my husband's dead. What do I do? What do I do?" And then everything just kind of went blank. I just know I started screaming, and I was in a stairwell and it was echoing all through the grocery store, and I'm sure it was horrible. And it's hard to stay composed when your world is crumbling. You just don't know what to do next.
Take us through what you're able to explain what happened to Tony in Afghanistan that day.
Well, he was in a convoy. It was a non-combat mission. They were delivering mail from one forward operating base to another. But apparently a civilian Afghani accidentally pulled into the middle of the convoy, and when he realized what he had done, he hit the brakes right in front of my son's Stryker, and the driver just reacted, your intuition or whatever. He just swerved, and the Stryker flipped up on, the wheels. And apparently at that point, Tony was thrown from the Stryker. And then the Stryker rolled. So he was killed pretty much immediately, I hope. I asked a lot of people that question, did he suffer? Because, you don't want to think of your kids suffering. And they reassured me that he didn't.
Did you ever think that anything like this would happen?
No. Not on an intellectual level, yes, but on an emotional level, no. Because, your kid's in the Army, your kid's in a war. So intellectually, you know it's going to happen. But you just don't think it's going to happen to you.
In a moment, we'll hear the story of Shane Parsons and his tale of miraculous survival in Iraq. Shane Parsons is a native of Toledo, Ohio, and was raised by his mother, Cindy. His father died when Shane was only 6 months old. Shane grew up watching G.I. Joe and listening to his grandfather's stories about their military involvement. But it wasn't until witnessing the tragic events of September 11 that Shane seriously considered joining the military.
We have a history from my grandfather, World War II. My other grandfather served in Korea. I got family that served in Desert Storm. So I was like, oh, I got some background, family, support. When World Trade Center hit and I decided, thought about it, and I remember watching, on the TV and stuff, so it kind of gave me a little push, and from there on, I think I was 18. Was I 18? I was 18 when I joined.
What was your reaction to Shane's decision to join the Army?
I was apprehensive, but on the other hand, I was proud of my son because he was ready to, put his life on the line, and I knew that, and he was ready to sacrifice and serve our country. When he saw the World Trade Center go down, I remember him pacing back and forth, and he said, "Mom, they can't do that to us. I won't have it."
Shane enlisted in the Army and was deployed to Baghdad in December of 2005. While Cindy, an emergency room nurse, was apprehensive about her son's decision, she supported his belief and was immensely proud of his desire to fight for America's freedoms. But her fears were realized when out on a mission, Shane's Humvee hit an EFP, or explosively formed penetrator.
We were driving, and I just remember just a big boom, like a pop. Really didn't hear it, and the smoke and debris, just smoke and the dust come up everywhere out of it. And I was like, oh God. I was like, what's going on? And I'm like, why did we stop? And I'm thinking, and I'm trying to and I couldn't feel anything at this time. And I'm like, oh, and I felt really weird. And I was like, oh, I got a sharp pain, and it just hit me. And I'm like, oh. And I look down, my pants are all wet, and I see blood through my pants, and pulled out my knife. I tried to, cut open the pants to see what's going on. I'm like, okay, this ain't too bad. Maybe it's not bad. And it was pretty bad. My legs looked like in a meat grinder. It was pretty bad. Really couldn't see my knee cap, and everything from there on was just pretty much gone. And it took a while for them to come, snatch us up. And I remember laying on the floor with a stretcher, and I'm flipping out. I'm asking, I was like, where's Chris? Where's Chris? I didn't care about myself. I was like, I'm fine. I was like, I ain't worried. So I'm like, where's Chris? My best friend.
What happened to Chris?
He ended up losing his left leg completely. I just remember looking over, and he literally was gone. He picked it up, and I saw him pick it up and set it right next to him.
He picked up his own leg?
Yeah, literally, it was gone. I just remember seeing a boot and a leg move together, and just remember picking it up and set it next to him. I was completely out. Ended up finding out I was cardiac arrest. I died 3 times. 1 on the site, 1 in the cache, and 1 in flight. I guess from there on, I didn't know I was at Longstool, Germany. I just remember the cache. That's a little bit it, in and out of it a little bit.
So Cindy, how did you receive the news that your son had been so critically injured?
The phone rings, and I literally just walked in the door maybe 15 minutes, and I answered the phone. It wasn't Shane. It was a strange voice. And I just remember hearing it echo that, identified who they were, and if I was Mrs. Parsons, and your son's been critically injured in Iraq. And it kind of echoed, and I didn't know what to believe, and so I listened, and he just said, make sure you stay by the phone. I can only tell you he's been critically wounded. He couldn't give me any information. Ooh. So I waited at that phone for hours till the next call came. And then the next call came, and they told me they had to take his leg, that they couldn't save his leg. Then that third call came. When that third call came, that tore me up pretty bad. Even going through what my job was every day, it didn't prepare me for what those words at the other end. And they said, ma'am, they had to amputate your son's other leg. And I dropped to my knees. And I just couldn't contain myself anymore. Of all my training, it hit me so hard because it was real. It was my son. And ended up getting some strings pulled where I could get on a plane to Washington, D.C. to expedite a passport along with my mom and brother, and flew us to Longstool, Germany to be at my son's side. When I was on that plane, to Germany. That was the longest ride. And I just remember in my mind, I was like screaming, you know, don't die, Shane. And I remember saying over and over, I'm coming, don't you give up, you keep fighting, I'm coming, Mom's coming. I was in total shock to see my child, my baby, on that bed, and he laid there, he looked lifeless. He was dying in front of my eyes, basically. And the next morning, of course, I couldn't sleep, and I remember waking up and walking out of the Fisher house across the street from the hospital in Nonstuhl, and I look up and I'm asking God, tell me, prepare me. Am I going to bring my son home in a coffin, or am I going to bring him home alive? And I remember looking over the hospital, and the sun was coming up, and there was a rainbow. I knew that was my sign from God that everything was going to be okay. And I knew he was going to make it.
When we return, we'll hear from a courageous Gold Star widow whose 2 young sons are living legacies to their dad. Nikki Bunting met her husband, Captain Brian Bubba Bunting, when they were in 6th grade but didn't start dating until later in life. Bubba had attended West Point Military Academy and already served time stationed in Korea. The two were married, and a few years later their son Connor was born. Bubba then made the difficult decision to leave the Army. He wanted to spend more time with his family since he and Nikki were planning on having more children. But Bubba's plans of retiring from the Army weren't meant to be.
So he decided to get out, and then he still owed 3 years of IRR, which is, you know, kind of just like the reserves, but you don't do anything on the weekends or anything. And then just out of the blue, they can recall you. And that's what happens. So we got the papers that recalled him. And I was a mess, but I could tell looking at him that he was really happy. He seemed really relieved. He kind of, sometimes I think he had non-deployer's guilt because he hadn't deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan. He had lost some of his friends. Some of his friends are, you know, severely injured. I also think that he always talked about that's what he was trained to do. You know, he went to West Point to lead. So I think he just finally felt like it was his time, and he was really happy to do so. So then we had about a month, and then he deployed.
When Bubba returned home for 2 weeks of R&R, he and Nikki spent most of their time with family, friends, and their son Connor. They also decided to try for another baby. After a wonderful 2 weeks filled with laughter and hope for the future, Bubba left once more for Afghanistan. Nikki talked with him days later to let him know she still wasn't sure if she was pregnant. That would be the last time she'd speak with her husband. Nikki, tell me about what happened 4 days after Bubba returned to Afghanistan.
That day, I actually had a really good day prior to that, and I'm really glad that I did. I took Connor to the library, and we had a great time, and then we went to the park, and then we went to the mall and played a little playground at the mall. And unbeknownst to me at the time, I had 2 soldiers waiting at my house the whole time. They arrived pretty much right after I left, and they just waited for me for about 5 hours. So I feel really lucky that I had a good day before that, because that was kind of our last good day for a long time. And then when we got home, I was staying with my mom at the time, and my sister was there, and of course my mom was home. And I said, why are you here, Tracy? To my sister, and she couldn't look me in the eye. And it was just weird. I could just tell something was weird. And then about 2 minutes after I was inside, and I saw the 2 soldiers coming. You know, when you see 2 soldiers coming to your door, you know immediately what had happened. So I just, of course, started screaming and just kind of broke down. You know, obviously I knew just right away, and then they said those awful words, you know, we regret to inform you, and then I kept saying, please just tell me he's hurt. You know, in retrospect, I wouldn't want him to be hurt, you know, I would never want him to suffer. So, but I just, you know, I couldn't believe it. You know, you worry about it when they're deployed, but you don't think it could ever happen to them.
What happened to Bubba?
He was killed by an IED, and their truck ran over it, and it was they killed all 4 American soldiers in the truck, as well as an Afghani interpreter. I guess their Humvee got stuck in the mud. Initially they ran over the IED once, and it didn't go off, and then they got stuck in the mud, so they put it in reverse, and they reversed over it. So I just think it shouldn't have happened, but it did.
Tell me about the day 4 days later after Bubba died. What happened then?
So my sister and my sister-in-law both stayed with me every night, and on the 4th night they said, "Is there a possibility that you're pregnant?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "But I'm just too scared to test." I was just terrified. I didn't want to do it because I didn't want the answer to be no. So we actually went to the drugstore at like midnight. I mean, it was like midnight, and we came home. So I went to the bathroom and I took the test, and then we're waiting like the longest 2 minutes of my life. And then I read it, and it was negative. So I thought, because I read it wrong. When you see those commercials that you say 98% of women read them wrong, yeah, that's me. So I just looked at them and I said, "I'm not." And I was kind of re-devastated all over again. And my sister, she's like a fixer. She tries to fix everything. So she's looking at it, she's like, "No, well maybe we can, And I'm like, "How are you gonna fix this, Tracy?" And then she looks at it and she looks at the box, she's like, "Nikki, this means you are." And I was like, "No." And I read it and I was like, oh my gosh. It was just like a miracle. And then I called every single one of my in-laws at midnight because I just thought, I don't want them to have another night or another morning of being devastated. I want them to have something to smile about again. Other than the obvious, it was the best news I could have possibly gotten, because when I was notified that he died, there was, obviously I was grieving him, but I was also grieving like all that we had hoped for, and all the things that we were looking forward to. So that was really hard. So it kind of brought a little piece of that back. So that was really nice. With the timing, as far as when he was killed and when he was home for R&R, I feel really lucky. I think we just got to see him. He got to see Connor. I'd say he didn't really have time to miss us yet, He was still happy for being home, and so that makes it a little bit easier on me. So I say that, given the same end result, we're really lucky with the timing. So, and I can't begin to explain how fortunate I feel to have our little baby. I call it my little miracle baby because it seemed like all odds were against us, So I'm just so blessed to have him.
In a moment, Helene, Nikki, and Shane will share their feelings on our soldiers' commitment to fighting for the freedoms we hold dear, a commitment that teaches us the value of human life. Shane Parsons, Tony Paci, and Bubba Bunting are true heroes for willingly putting themselves on the line to defend our freedoms, including our right to life. Their families are also heroes for bearing a lifetime of sacrifice for those freedoms we enjoy. Tony's brother Marco wants all Americans to know how proud his brother was to fight for this country. This is especially meaningful because Tony's tragic sacrifice will leave a lifetime impact on Marco and his family. What's the one thing you want Americans to know about your brother?
He really took pride in what he did, and he really, believed in what he was doing, fighting for our freedom, and that he was fighting for us to continue to live the lives that we do.
His ability to put all of them before himself, to put his life on the line for them, to be willing to put an American flag on his soldier and go in a hostile place and say, "You're not going to blow up our World Trade Centers. You're not going to hurt any more of my fellow Americans."
That he really believed in what he was doing. He really did. His job in Afghanistan was training the Afghani National Police. It was a really hard job. He really believed in what he was doing, and he loved his soldiers. He really did. And his soldiers loved him. I get the best compliments from them. They just say, "He's the best officer I've ever had," and that's a good compliment to me.
Sign of a true leader.
It is, yeah. I just am so proud of him.
We'll never quit. We'll never back down. Now, this is America, you know. As long as these wars are going on, there'll always be somebody to, you know, back it up and be there no matter what and fight for what we believe in. And I believe in, you know, truth, justice, and the American way. And I'll never quit. It's anything. It's something I'll never give up.
These tragic and triumphant stories of sacrifice and survival are only the beginning. Join us next week for part 2 of this very special program. You'll learn how Helene and Nikki are coping with their tragic loss. You'll hear about Shane's incredible road to recovery. And you'll discover how each family is working to make sure their soldier's sacrifice will not be forgotten. Thanks for watching.